Let's start. I think we are at the 1 minute mark now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very interesting panel to discuss heat index insurance. I am here on behalf of SCBF, and we have convened a group of people who is both very keen and are absolutely experts in the area of what heat index insurance means. And today we'd like to discuss a bit more about the kind of products that they've been working with. I would like to welcome you all to this session. This is supposed to be a 1 hour session. We would request the audience to stay on mute, but please feel free to send any questions that you may have in the chat. This session will be recorded and will be available for perusal on the Financial Inclusion Week website post 8th of October, I believe. So you should be able to find this recorded session there if you want to go back or if you want to share this with anybody else. I will quickly introduce SCBF first, and then we will go into the context of extreme heat and heat index insurance. Azalea, could we go to the next slide, please? Sorry, Azalea, I need the next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. So SCBF is the Swiss capacity building facility, which is focused on innovating inclusive financing with a focus in 4 areas, starting with health. Again, next slide, please. Yeah, starting with health, with a focus on reducing out-of-pocket expenditures and increasing access to both primary care as well as care for NCDs. Under the agriculture pillar, the goal is to provide equitable access to financing, markets, resources, as well as improving overall resilience of the ecosystem, but more specifically, climate resilience as well. And again, that's part of the reason why we're here today. The goal continues to be supporting inclusive financing through digital markets or digital financial services and making sure that these are accessible to all, hence keeping them inclusive. And finally, we also have housing, where affordable, green, and eco-friendly homeownership is the goal that SCBF is hoping to promote. Cutting across all of these priorities are climate, gender, and migration. So keeping in mind that these are some of the areas of vulnerability, SCBF has found both partners and projects to support in order to create sustainable and scalable change. We are supporting nearly 5 million end users through products like insurance, so leading with insurance, and also credit, savings, as well as digital financial services. Azalea, if we can skip to the last slide of this deck. Sorry, yeah, there was also a breakdown of how many and what different kind of products, but these are our members and they contribute in various ways. We actually have some of them present here on the panel with us today, but it's a very good mix of financial sector, health, etc., that come together to try and promote as many interesting projects as possible across many different geographies. So that's a little bit about SCBF. Now, let's talk about extreme heat and what does that mean? Right now, a heat wave is defined as 3+ days of exceptionally hot weather. Since we're talking about a lot of the projects happening in India, usually during the summers, which is the seasons of March to June, we experience about 2 to 3 heat waves per season, and maybe even more in the vulnerable areas. Now, India has reported nearly 100 deaths and 40,000 cases of heat stroke in just 2024. There's tremendous misreporting, but this gives you an idea of the magnitude of the problem. According to the FAO, vulnerable households lose about 5% of their total income due to heat stress in any given year, and this will only increase if suitable adaptation and mitigation is not provided to them. There's productivity loss, with the expectation by 2030, it will globally go up to nearly $2.4 trillion. And these are obviously very large numbers, and we see a lot of the impact of heat and what it does to vulnerable communities regularly. Today, we will focus on protecting livelihoods under extreme heat conditions and see how embedding heat index insurance as a part of the solution has benefited some of the vulnerable communities that our partners are trying to work with. So what is heat index insurance? Heat index insurance is an index-based insurance that compensates the beneficiary whenever the temperature goes above a certain point. There can be a more sophisticated index to accommodate the need of the insureds, But the payout is usually modeled based upon the loss of income due to the extreme heat event and the inability to go out and work or work at the same level of productivity, or for other adaptation activities, or for uses of health concerns and to address specific health needs, etc. Today, we will talk about three such solutions in India. I'll quickly introduce our participants, our panelists here. First up, we have Sarah Ibrahimi from Blue Marble. Sarah heads the institutional partnerships and the personal lines for Blue Marble. We also have Kai Tushan from the Celsius Pro Group. He heads the climate resilience solutions for Celsius Pro. And finally, we have Balachandran MK from the Ibiza network. He is the head of growth in Ibiza Ibiza in India. The first part of this is just to understand really what the heat products that have been in the market are like. So I'd like all of you to maybe describe your product, describe your organization and the goal that you have with some of these products that you've taken to the market, who your key partners are, and what have you learned so far. Sarah, shall we begin with you?
Sure. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for bringing together this group. I know that, over the last 2 years, I have never heard extreme heat spoken about in the development community, and especially in the insurance community specifically, as much as I have. So it's really, really exciting. And thank you for hosting this event, especially coming off the tail of New York Climate Week, where I just was, and it's still super exciting to have extreme heat be spoken about as much as it has been. So thanks for keeping the momentum going on this really important issue in creating this venue. I'm here representing Blue Marble, and for those that aren't familiar with Blue Marble, we are an impact insurtech that specializes in designing climate parametric insurance specifically for the underserved. So our entire mission is focused on where are there vulnerable populations, where are there groups that currently don't have access to insurance solutions, and how can we create meaningful, valuable products for those populations. We focus our work in really two areas. The first being working with corporates, largely food and beverage companies with the likes of Nespresso, Nestle, Starbucks, Nescafe, Mondelez. So really helping these corporations looking at how can they not only improve the resilience of their supply chain, but how can they improve the lives of the smallholder farmers that are providing the inputs to make, whether it's the coffee or the chocolate that their final brands depends on. And then the other half of our business, which is where my work focuses, is on the public sector. So looking at all of our government partners, our NGO partners, our multilateral development organizational partners. And here we're really looking at building financial sustainability and stability for the most vulnerable populations among us. Blue Marble, we really focus on customer-centric design. So that's using a lot of human-centered design principles in our work. We also ensure that we are building, ecosystems of both public and private partners in all that we do, which is what you'll see an example of in our project today, where we'll talk about extreme heat. And we really focus on the sustainability and scalability to have long-term approaches to what we create, so that after a project wraps up, which maybe has a 2 or 3 year time frame, that good work doesn't disappear, and that the communities really do have long-standing insurance solutions in place. So to shift a little bit into discussing kind of the reason why we're here today. So back in late 2022, Blue Marble, we first learned about the topic of extreme heat through our partner Arstrock. Now Arstrock, they are experts on all things extreme heat and how it relates to the human body and what health impacts extreme heat has. And Arstrock had been in contact with SEVA, which is the Self-Employed Women's Association. And SEVA is the largest women's trade association in India. They have close to 3 million members now, all poor women that are kind of at the fringes of society without, formal work, which is why, as a trade union, they join SEVA so that they can have some try to bring some formality to their otherwise, precarious work situations. These are women that are working as garbage pickers, recycling collectors, salt pan workers, construction site pickers. So really imagine the poorest of the poor women that are truly exposed to the elements, whether it be extreme heat or floods. And so Arshrock and Seva, they contacted us because they wanted to explore whether an extreme heat insurance product was even possible. They wanted to look beyond traditional, philanthropic work, just charitable giving, and really see, is there a new financial service that we can bring to market? And up until this point, we had only seen extreme heat be applied in the context of agriculture, so crops or livestock. And even though we hadn't seen it been done before, Blue Marble, we were really curious about the problem. And we wanted to test to find, is there a way that we can create this solution? And we had seen firsthand rising temperatures affecting other markets and affecting other projects of ours. And we really wanted to test, can insurers be innovators in the financial sector and create this new solution? So our first meetings with Arshrock and Seva teams were really to understand the problem. We didn't want to make assumptions, and as I mentioned, we use a lot of field visits and customer chats and really learning from our customers before we design for them. So the key questions we were really looking at what temperatures did it become dangerous for women to be working outside? And this is where we really relied on the heat experts at Arshrock to complement the firsthand accounts that women gave us about how they felt and at what temperatures they felt that. And then also, besides temperature, what else were really critical factors and parameters that we needed to be looking at? Was it humidity? Did that make a big difference? What about nighttime temperatures? Did we also need to look at that? And since it was insurance, we really need to identify exactly what we were insuring, because we didn't want it to be just a traditional health insurance, because that was something that the women already had access to through Seva. So we didn't want to insure them only if they got so ill and they had to go to hospital, or if, God forbid, they passed away as a result of extreme heat, which we do see. But we needed to figure out what was the insurable interest. And so based on feedback and inputs from Seva, who helped facilitate focus groups discussions with these women, we learned that we really wanted to hone in on their income. And the women on average, and I mentioned some of the different trades that they worked in earlier, but these were women that were earning on average approximately $3 per day. And so we decided that the best thing that we could ensure would be the equivalent of their daily wage, so that if the temperatures became dangerous for them to be working, we would compensate them the equivalent of that daily wage. And this was as defined by Girija earlier. It would be for a heat wave is defined as a period of more than 3 days. So we looked at, okay, if the temperatures are above a certain threshold for 3 days consecutively, the women would receive an equivalent payout of what their income would have been during those 3 days. And we also knew that, in order for this project to be sustainable in the long term, it needs to be affordable for the women to at least eventually cover some, if not all, of the cost of the insurance premium on their own. And so balancing affordability and coverage was really top of mind for us during the design process. And we also sought to understand what women need in addition to insurance coverage, knowing that insurance is just one tool, but not a panacea for how they can cope with extreme heat. And so before I pass over to my fellow panelists, I just want to share a few insights on what we learned in terms of the product design. So first and foremost, the timing of the payouts. So if there was a heat wave, having timely payouts was of utmost importance to these women, since the goal of the product was to supplement their lost income due to extreme heat. So we couldn't have a heat wave happen in April and then at the end of this heat season in July be offering them a payout for an event that happened 3 months earlier. That simply wouldn't work for the women in the way that they manage their money and they manage their lives. And so instead of designing a product to give them one payout at the end of the season, which is typically how parametric products are designed, Blue Marble, we designed the product to be in 10-day phases. So this enabled women to potentially receive a payout at the end of each 10-day phase, with the funds directly deposited to their bank accounts, which is another piece of work that Seva does, is getting women banked and into the financial banking sector, instead of them having to wait until the end of the heat season. Another key factor was that this was easy to understand. Given that this was women's most, and primarily it was their first experience with parametric insurance. So Blue Marble intentionally designed the product to be really easy to be explained by SEVA's local women leaders, who are the ones who go out into the communities and who enroll and educate the women about the product. So Blue Marble worked really closely in collaboration with SEVA's leadership team to ensure that the product would be understood by the local women leaders and that women could understand what they were purchasing, how the product worked, and so that we were able to build trust with them and build trust in insurance as a product. And then tangible goods as a value added service that we added on created trust and increased the uptake of the insurance product. So I mentioned that we spoke to the women about, okay, beyond insurance, what do you need? And they mentioned to us some really tangible benefits that they needed, such as shade tents, water coolers, solar lamps. These were all things that we could provide them in addition to the insurance. So during this pilot season, when the women purchased an insurance policy, they had their choice of selecting one of those three items to be gifted to them as a wraparound service. And this additional value and bundling of the product really helped create trust and increase interest in the insurance product. I'll stop there. Thank you.
This is extremely interesting, especially since in a country like India and most emerging economies, we see there to be a fair amount of lack of trust when it comes to insurance and the ability to pay upfront for an insurance, a tangible product that's given along with the first coverage or maybe even the first claim is usually seen as a good way to get people engaged. So I'll come back to you and ask you a little bit more about how you did this and the work for awareness especially. But for now, let me move on to Kai. And Kai, specifically for you, we'd love to understand the product with Celsius Pro, the role that NDF has played so far with creating products like this, your work with the Mahila Housing Trust, and especially maybe a little more focus on you've also designed this product very thoughtfully. So if you can speak to the product design and what the journey of that was like, that would also be very interesting for us.
Thank you so much, Girija, and also thanks, Sarah, for the introduction of your work. I'm very much looking forward to Bala's presentation as well, and thanks to SCBF for convening this group. I think it's incredibly timely that the three of our organizations kind of get together and speak about the projects that we've been piloting and working on for such a long time. And as Sarah said, the topic of heat is only has only made it to the insurance stage for a few years, and it's very important that we do speak about what we do and that we do exchange and that we do kind of also put the products up for challenge. I think that's going to be very helpful. Yeah, my name is Kai. I joined Celsius Pro Group as the new head of climate resilience solutions last year. Celsius Pro Group is an insurtech, and we provide insurance technology and combine it also with the provision of very specialized risk capacity. Since we've acquired Global Parametrics last year, we do manage the Natural Disaster Fund as a capacity vehicle. I'm going to say a few words about that in a second. And my team, the Climate Resilience Solutions Unit, basically translates the capabilities of the company that we also apply in commercial context into climate resilience projects in the Global South. And yeah, let me come to the Natural Disaster Fund, because I think it's a very interesting vehicle. I'm not going to go into all details of this chart, but the NDF is basically a donor-supported reinsurance facility. So you see on the slide that we have paid-in capital from donor governments sitting in the fund, being matched with additional risk capacity by Hannover Re, and also fronting paper, and we can underwrite this capacity on behalf of the capacity providers to basically any sort of risk aggregator in the Global South. So we can act as a reinsurer to microinsurance organizations or risk pools, but we can also underwrite risk capacity in the form of derivatives for humanitarian organizations or any sort of, intermediary. And the interesting part that also comes into play for the project that I'm going to speak about is the NDF Technical Assistance Facility that is supported by the German Financial Corporation, and it can provide catalytic grants for specific projects at the frontier of innovation to create new parametric solutions together with partners that then can also be equipped with risk capacity for an initial phase through the NDF, and that's kind of how the ecosystem comes together. The project we've done together with Mahila Housing Trust is or had the objective to create an excess heat cover for female workers. We were approached by Mahila Housing Trust, which is an incredibly knowledgeable organization, and I think I don't need to say too many words about this slide. I think the fact that heat waves are disproportionately affecting especially female workers in India is something that we're all very much aware about. And the fact that these women have very low means to adapt to climate change in general is something that needs to be addressed. And as Sarah said, insurance can be one part of addressing this challenge. So how did we approach this ultimately? I said earlier, we have a very partnership-based approach in addressing the innovation frontier of parametric insurance. In this case, we worked very closely together with the Mahila Housing Trust and a few other actors. So we also worked together with Howden India and a local insurance company. And I think the role of MHT was very, very crucial, similar to what we've heard earlier about SEWA. So they have conducted a lot of focus group discussions, and they are already running an entire ecosystem of climate change adaptation together with the women they are working with. And with our project, we're basically adding one additional element, an insurance element, to this overall approach. And it thus becomes a very holistic, integrated risk management approach, which is important because the women we are working with there in India, they are already risk managers. They are risk managers more than every one of us, and with the project, we just need to provide them with an additional tool to manage the risk that they manage every day in their everyday decision making. And I think that's also something that we learned over the course of the 2 years, that the women in the project make very conscious decisions about what they do, and make very conscious decisions about the sacrifices they make, either in terms of health or in terms of income when being confronted with a heat wave. And that's very important that the insurance design is responsive to this decision making. And I'm going to come to that in a second. So we've launched the product in the beginning of this year, and we've already seen a payout in May to a heat wave. And the product itself went through a lot of iterations, but all parties in the end agree that kind of this process was very intense, but it was very, very helpful. And a lot of different structures have been tested and discussed in that course. And ultimately, it's a 2-layer structure in our case. So we have a kind of first line of defense that triggers for a 1 in 5 year heat wave. And then there's a second layer that would trigger a full payout for a 1 in 20 year event. Both layers to be triggered after 2 consecutive days of the heat triggers being reached. The heat triggers are individual to the 3 cities that we are currently covering. And something that I think is very interesting about that is that initially when we proposed like a 1-layer structure, the feedback was that it would trigger way too late, so that we would not set an incentive for the women to actually adapt their behavior. So with the 2-layer structure, even for a slightly milder heat wave, we can already incentivize behavioral change, which means that instead of exposing themselves to the heat and still going to work, being unsure about a potential payout, the women can be a bit more sure about the payout and can make a conscious and informed decision on whether to expose themselves to the heat and risk their health, and rather kind of stay at home and be like more sure about the payout. So that's one, I think, key learning from the project. And the other one is that I mean, there's a kind of whole science about how to structure heat indices, especially with regards to physiological dimensions. And Sarah, you also briefly touched upon it earlier, that there's a lot of things that you can add to an index. And from our perspective, from a technical side, the index could even be more sophisticated for this project. But what we've been told is that one thing that is very important is that the trigger events of the respective index are also in line with what is communicated locally in terms of when is a heat wave being announced. And in this case, if we had gone for what is called a wet bulb heat index, we have seen kind of historical discrepancies with the local heat wave announcements, which are based on dry bulb heat waves. So for this stage of the project, we've gone for a dry bulb heat index, which is like slightly less sophisticated in terms of capturing physiological impacts on the human body. But that was a big factor for the uptake of the product and for the client satisfaction ultimately. And yeah, as I said earlier, it was very crucial to embed the heat insurance solution into an ecosystem and an adaptation ecosystem that is already gender responsive, based on the work that MHT is doing, and embedding the insurance solution into other means to adaptation, such as white paint on rooftops and other things to cool down the houses of the people that they are living in. Yeah, what is the perspective for this product? I think the first season payout will be very helpful for us to reassess kind of the structure, the payout speed, distribution of the payments locally. That's something that we're discussing with the partners right now. I think it's very crucial that there's a continued premium support, not only for 1 year, but also for upcoming years. And the potential phase out will then show kind of to which extent the community is able and willing to pay for the product, based on the kind of the perceived value that they see in it. And for us, from an underwriting perspective, we will definitely kind of continue to observe the performance of the structure and the index over time, to see whether it maybe does make change to switch to a wet bulb structure rather than sticking to the dry bulb structure, which, as I said, is more sophisticated from a physiological perspective. And what we have seen as very helpful is having the NDF, the Natural Disaster Fund, in our bags to equip the solution with risk capacity for the initial pilot phase, where the pilot is small and commercial reinsurers might not necessarily have the necessary appetite to to cover such a pilot with reinsurance capacity. Yeah, I'll close here and hand back to you, Girija.
Thank you, Kai. This is very interesting. I think I would like to now move on to Bala. And the interesting part of the contrast that I'd like to draw here between the two previously discussed projects versus what we will now discuss with Bala is there's a focus on income protection, but for specific segments and largely for the informal group. But with what Ibiza Network has done, they have created the product for dairy farmers specifically to account for loss of productivity of the cattle. And we would like to understand a bit more the thought process behind how this was designed. What are your experiences from the first season? And we also understand that the farmers don't the farmers pay the premium by themselves, but they don't pay it as purely insurance premium. It gets deducted through other means with between the relationship with the milk union. So can you elaborate a little more on the existing trust and the communication channels between the milk unions and the farmers, while of course giving us the broader picture of this project?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks, Virija. Kay, if you don't mind, can you please stop the screen sharing? Okay, thank you. Thanks. And very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I can see people from around the globe. So yeah, I guess this is a very timely discussion that we are having, and thanks XCBF for organizing this. Why I'm saying it's timely, because one, we are already started the preparation for upcoming summer here in India, because this solution or this intervention that all the participants who have speak before, as well as all of us are doing, is very critical, and it's very timely, and it's been accepted by the market. So one, why I said it's timely is because we are already in the phase for the next season. Two, these are all solutions that can be taken from India to other countries as well. So for example, Africa, the summer is coming up, and we are geared up to, because that is where when a product becomes successful, because it's not just matter of launching it or successfully doing it in one market, but it's all about taking it from one market to other markets where it is needed. So I hope this intervention, such discussions will definitely help in disseminating the awareness about these products in other markets as well. So thanks to XCBF for that. Coming back to Ibiza and the product, we are an insurtech startup similar to my other co-panelist, but yeah, we do only index insurance or parametric insurance. We design innovative parametric insurance is what I would say. We are a global player based out of Luxembourg, but operational in multiple countries, including Philippines, India, few of the African countries, Bangladesh. So we are expanding. And when I talk about innovation, because what we believe is more about productizing, or I would say scaling up the products, not in just one market, not in just one sector. Because if you see in the underdeveloped and developing countries, parametric insurance was specifically used or was mainly used for farming or for agriculture. But what we are seeing now is that shift from designing products not just for agriculture, but for other sectors as well. And we are also happy to share that we have done a few innovations which are first of its kind. The dairy heat index is one of such product. We have also ventured into insuring MFIs. We have ventured into insuring warehouses. We are also venturing into multiple other sectors which are new to parametric insurance. And when we say it's not, when we say about innovation, it's very easy to say that we have innovated one product, but I guess the crux lies in scalability, and the crux lies in simplicity of the product and affordability of the product, so that people will understand and buy it. Along with simplicity and affordability, I would also like to address one more aspect, which is accessibility. And that's where, Girija, when you highlighted the link between the cooperatives and the farmers, we'll talk a bit about that as well. But coming back to heat index, in Ibiza, we have done this product in 3 different sectors. So we were the first one to do the dairy heat index in 2023. We did the poultry heat index in 2024, and we did the human heat index as well, like my co-panelists who have done the same. But the difference in the approach, or I would say, one, addressing new sectors. Dairy is one of the such sectors which gets affected by heat in a very, very big way, and people understands that issue. Because whenever we design a product, one of the important factors that we should keep in mind, whether that product is need of the hour or not. And that can be, I would say, that comes when people empathizes with the product, when they relate to that problem. So the heat induced stress is one such problem that dairy sector relates very well, because summer is the lean season for the entire industry. There is a dip in production. The input of the farmer or the effort of the farmer remains the same, but his output is reduced by at least 20 to 30% from each cattle. So the product covers that reduction in milk yield, which is again a reduction in his financial income. And when I talk about quantifying that financial loss, is approximately $1 per day per cow. So a farmer who is having 5 to 6 cows, that is a normal herd size here in India or in any similar country. So the kind of financial loss that he's incurring per day is quite high, and he is surviving with that problem, or he is living with that problem for as many decades as he is into dairying. So now he's having a solution which can cover his financial loss or his income loss through a heat index product with just triggers that loss, which is equivalent to this reduction in milk yield if there is a heat wave condition. And heat wave condition is defined as the similar way like any other parametric insurance product. When the threshold goes above that particular maximum temperature for X number of days, that particular payout is released, which is considered to be equivalent to that financial loss that farmer has. And the success factor would that's something that I would like to highlight here. One, as I said, the product is simple. The farmer relates to this problem and it's easy for him to understand, oh, if the temperature is going above X degrees Celsius for X number of days, I will get so many rupees. So that's very easy to understand. Second, when I talk about affordability, this product in dairy heat index or in dairy was launched at around approximately $1.2 per cattle kind of a premium rate. So that is so low, or the premium rate is it's a low ticket size product, and we believe in mass enrollments, and that's where it has worked, because a farmer, if he wants to pay something at that sort of a low ticket size, he will not think twice. He will at least say, okay, let me try it out. And the next big aspect, as I said, is accessibility. So we might design the good products, we might have affordable products, but how can we take it to the last mile? So distribution holds a very key point to any product that we design. And dairy heat index was successful because of that distribution reach that we had through milk cooperatives. So milk cooperative is a unique distribution system, because there the farmer goes daily. He goes daily in the morning as well as in the afternoon to pour his milk, whatever he has collected. So the connect between a farmer and a dairy cooperative is very, very unique. And they trust the cooperative. And when the cooperative suggests something, the farmers quite accepts it quite well, so quite fast. So that trust factor, that connection factor is something that helped to scale, because when we started in 2023, we did some 20,000 animals as a pilot, and then now we are above 100,000 cattle that we have done in last summer. So the scale has been possible because of this connect, because of this distribution reach through the cooperatives, and also the direct daily connect that they have with the farmers. One more point to add to this entire concept is that whatever business or whatever enrollment that we did was without subsidy, and that was possible because of the low ticket size product that we launched in the market. Similar was the case with poultry heat index as well as human heat index. Whatever product that was done and tested was without any subsidy. So that gives a lot of confidence to us as a entity who designs product. When people come forward and buy it with their own will and their own money, and they buy it again in the next year, that shows that, okay, that scale shows that, okay, that's how the product is started clicking in the market and people have started accepting the product. And that's something that we have seen. And one more aspect that I would suggest, what I want to highlight is the transparency and trust, because we all talk about trust between partnerships, trust between the distribution partner as well as the farmers. That is needed. But something that we have done innovatively to increase that transparency and trust is that we have given that access, or there is a portal that has been given to these customers or the channel partners to monitor this temperature on a daily basis. So they have an access to this daily temperature monitoring platform, wherein the customers can log in and see how the product is performing. So on a daily basis, he can see in each all locations how the temperature has been recorded, whether they have any claims. If they have any claims, what tune to the claim is that he has recorded in that location. So that's an API-driven platform which gives that real-time update to the customers, which increases that trust, because insurance is a very, very difficult instrument to sell. And unless otherwise we build that trust and transparency, becomes a bit difficult to take this product to the last mile. So yeah, I guess these are the important points which I wanted to highlight, but I'm ready to discuss this when we have other points to discuss. Girija, I will stop here and over to you.
Thank you, Bala. This was, thank you all three of you. This was obviously a very interesting insight into the products themselves and the partners that you're working with, and a little bit of color to who the beneficiaries are, how they've been reacting to your product. So in the interest of time, I would like to really make sure that we focus on what scale would mean for a product like this, and what are the next steps for a project that's so innovative and that we maybe need to still learn a few things about. So there's clearly a major need for this product. The need is global, it's across multiple sectors. So are we really ready to move to scale and replication already? Is there something else that we need to still learn, say, about the customers and how they're adopting this product? How aware are they? Maybe even the impact of heat overall. So do we need to keep doing more work around the impact of heat and the adaptation measures that should be additionally provided? And I mean, then there are other questions like how do we adapt heat index income protection to say additional climate exposed segments? So could we do something similar for excess rainfall? Or should we start, thinking about another, even drought, which Kai mentioned very briefly? Should that be the obvious next step? So I'd like maybe all of you to chime in a little bit, tell us a little bit about how you see this. What do you see the role of various partners, public policy makers, institutional funders, insurance industry to be? And what do you see as your next steps for this project? Kai, shall we begin with you this time?
Sure, thanks a lot. Yeah, I think something that kind of stuck with me across the three presentations was kind of the question of balancing kind of product sophistication versus understandability. Because I think heat insurance is a product where the people are exposed to quite some public communication also. And it's very important to manage expectations of what the product can do and what it cannot do. So what has it been designed for and what has it not been designed for? And striking a balance between the complexity of a product. I mean, you can go fully academic on heat risk assessments where you will see kind of people wearing certain clothes in a certain context, in a certain occupation, having certain impacts on their health. That's obviously something that you cannot capture in a parametric insurance product as easily and keep it easily accessible to the people. And I think that's one key kind of cornerstone to scale. The second one is I think that like heat insurance solutions are highly context sensitive. So it really matters kind of what is the target group doing on a daily basis? How do you assess their potential losses? How do you assess their heat risk on their health? So I think good heat risk assessments will really help us to construct meaningful heat insurance products. And then I think my last point is that we also need to understand heat as a cross-cutting issue, as you just said. Under the NDF, we also have a bunch of drought insurance projects. And something that we are confronted with quite often is that people have experience with drought insurance products, but they've observed or experienced a heat-induced drought. And then the solutions they had in place didn't trigger. So the index solution that we're using in the context of drought, our water balance index, is both responsive to the absence of precipitation and extreme heat, because it does consider evapotranspiration also. And that does make the index also meaningful in the context of extreme heat waves and corresponding losses in agricultural yields and ultimately food security for the people. So I think understanding scaling, not only in terms of replicating the same product in another context, but also in terms of finding kind of where does heat have the biggest impact on the people in the specific context.
Very interesting. Bala, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I will just try to share my thoughts on the scalability and where we see these products are going. See, one important factor, as I said in the beginning, these discussions are very timely because people have already started coming up, the partners or the market has already started discussing about the next season. And that's where I feel like it's a positive sign because, for example, the dairy heat index as well as the human heat index, we already have initiated discussion with a lot of partners who wants to start the product design right now because they are saying last time we got a bit late. we did the product at the last moment. We don't want that to happen. We want to have the product in place well in advance, so we have a lot of enrollment window in place. So I guess all these are very, very positive inputs or positive feedback from the market. And one more aspect which I feel is very, very positive is the involvement from the policymakers, because this dairy heat index, for example, is one of its kind, first of its kind, and it's noted very well, or it's appreciated by the policymakers of livestock department here in India. So there are discussions at the government level to see how best we can actually use this product from a government perspective. So they are also looking at it as a tangible solution that can be provided to the dairy farmers, which can actually be the game changer, because a policy level change from the government side is going to be a very, very different scenario altogether. So such level of discussions are already initiated for the product. So I feel a product becomes successful when it's not just piloted or when it's not scaled to certain locations, but it becomes successful when there is a policy level change that it can induce. So I guess those things are happening, and definitely there is going to be a huge, I would say, involvement from those policymakers also to see how best we can actually fine tune the product for a larger base. And also for the human heat index, even though the product that we did couldn't generate any claims last year, but still the client is very, very, very focused, and they are already saying like we need to do a workshop to improvise the product, because they are very, very much enthusiastic to see that product is actually the need of these women workers. So that gives a lot of confidence, because when a product worked with claims, definitely it will scale up, and that is what happened with human heat index. But unfortunately with us, for the human heat index, the trigger was for 6 days and there was a heat wave only for 5 days. So they missed that claim by a day, but still they are coming back and saying, okay, we know what happened, but let's try to improvise this and see what best we can do in the upcoming season. So those are very positive feedback, very positive vibe from the market. And when it comes to insurers, I guess they are also looking at it as a very positive way to improvise the new product offerings, because they also want to get into new sectors, new segments with new products. And heat index for all these sectors, because in India, we work with multiple insurers. We are not working with just one, we work with at least 5 insurers. So everybody is very quite happy, quite eager to participate in the upcoming season, because there are few players who couldn't do that kind of a product last year. So this year they are saying we would also like to be a part of this. So the entire stakeholders are coming together. Reinsurers are quite interested. So I guess that is where these products becomes a quite successful, when we get that vibe from the market, from both from the demand side and the supply side. So we are just people who can design products, but when there is a demand from both the sides, I guess that gives a lot of positive vibe for the upcoming season. And I hope this product will definitely go much more countries, much more sectors, and much more in the numbers that we have done. All of us have done a bit, but I guess this is just the starting.
Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to answer the question slightly differently, just to complement the other panelists. And also I saw some really good questions coming through the chat from Noam and Richard, so I'll try to touch on those slightly. So big picture, I think, the insurance industry, we have been known for being a bit slow to innovate and being a bit risk averse. And we're not necessarily have been at the forefront of innovation in the past. But I will say that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, I've been incredibly encouraged by the leadership role that I've seen insurers taking in the topic of extreme heat. And, this year throughout kind of the conference circuit, as you can say, I've been seeing it not only on the agenda, but at the top of the agenda in some instances. And I think that's really encouraging, especially to see something that's been getting so much press in the last 2 years, and then us not just having it stay as press and scary headlines, but us actually taking action on that. And so I think that we've all been talking today about parametric insurance, and parametric insurance, I don't know if we provided a general definition of what that is, but that's essentially when insurers, we use data from satellites to tell us when there needs to be a payout versus having to go in person and do a claim processing to show, okay, this is the actual payout versus what the loss is. So parametric insurance is particularly, unique in that we can be a good solution for extreme climate events, especially heat, because it's something where it's relying on satellite data, the payouts are automated, it can get the money really quickly into the hands of beneficiaries, depending on how it's designed, and that allows them to make, critical decisions much more quickly compared to traditional insurance. So I see some hope there for the future and for the scaling up. And secondly, in June this year, I attended something called the Insurance Development Forum that I know some colleagues on the call also attended. And what struck me during one of the sessions was a quote that was given, which was, "What's uninsurable is uninvestable." And that really struck me because it underscores that insurance really is not only just a risk mitigation tool, but it is the backbone for economic growth and investability. And so while extreme heat is a little bit easier to ignore compared to other disasters, such as hurricanes and droughts and floods, because we don't see the impact, we just see the headlines. So we really need to continue to be really outspoken about the toll that extreme heat does take on our communities and on our health. And we really need to continue creating and scaling up these solutions before it becomes uninsurable and then eventually uninvestable. And so beyond the insurance industry, I also think that it's critical for us not to be taking, just be speaking in a vacuum here, but to Noam's question about how do we get long-term support. And this is really where making sure we're bringing in local governments and having extreme heat become part of social safety net programs. The target beneficiaries of programs like this are oftentimes the poorest of the poor, and so it's not always realistic to expect the women to be able to cover the full cost of the insurance premiums themselves. And so donor support, such as support from SCBF in the instance of Blue Marble, really has been catalytic in terms of funding the initial, design costs and, doing fundraising to provide partial premium subsidies. But in the long term, we need to be really educating beneficiaries on, what the value of the product is, having them experience payouts so that they know that it's not just us talking about payouts, but they actually see the payouts. And then trying to close that gap between their capacity to pay and the actual premium with some sort of long-term subsidy support, either through public policy and social safety net programming to help protect them. And of course, engaging with local governments to raise awareness on the importance of protecting these vulnerable populations really is something that we all play a role in the development community. So if you're working in development and you maybe don't have extreme heat on the agenda of topics that you're talking about, please do, reach out to any of us. I'm sure that we're happy to share our knowledge in terms of, what it is and how we're able to support each other. Thank you.
This is very helpful. Thank you, Sarah. Again, in the interest of time, I'll maybe have one very quick fire round with all the panelists. So, and I'm picking questions from the audience that we've received. So, Kyle, let's begin with you because I think the other panelists have chimed in on this. Do you think that these heat index insurance products need the same level of premium subsidy as, say, a parametric crop insurance or a yield insurance?
I'm not so sure whether it's a question of what I think here. I think it's something that we try to observe. In our case, the product is subsidized, and the project consortium is planning with further subsidies with the potential phase out, and then it's, I think, to be observed whether at which level kind of people's willingness and ability to pay kind of reaches its end. And I think we're all more or less in piloting phase with our respective solutions. So right now is the learning phase, and we're making our first baby steps. And I think it's very important that we document, that we share, that we published our learnings, so that we can all kind of scale in a meaningful way. And then if premium subsidies are needed, I think it is important that we do secure them, and that also donors are more open about it, and also are more open about long-term subsidies rather than always committing to a 3-year pilot with a phase out to 0% at the end, while heavily subsidizing their own domestic agricultural insurance schemes with billions of dollars. So I think that's definitely the call that we need to make there.
Very interesting. Now, Bala, quickly for you, and there's a question from Dana again from the audience. Do you think that it makes sense to bundle these products with something else? So in the case of, say, dairy farmers, should we bundle this with livestock insurance or any other kind of product? Or does that go against the product simplicity and the ease of communication?
It can be looked at both ways. I would suggest that it will depend upon the sector and the channel that we are using, because certain channels need that bundling when it comes to many parametric insurance solutions. I hope all of us will agree to the fact that it's always successful when it is bundled with some other solutions, and it's mostly the case with any insurance product. It's very difficult to get a standalone insurance product to be sold in the market. So that remains there. But having said that, specific products, specific partnerships can actually drive this business even without bundling. And that's what we have seen in our example. Because in dairy, the biggest advantage that we had with cooperatives is that the farmers, as you said in the beginning, they don't pay from their pocket, because they pour milk to the societies and they are supposed to be paid for the milk that they give to the societies. So there is always a payment that is pending from the societies to the farmers. And from that, if they ask to pay, okay, $1 for this insurance product, then they don't mind giving that consent, because they don't feel like, okay, I'm paying it from my pocket. So there are different, it all depends upon the product as well as the distribution that we have in hand. So I will not say that there is a direct answer to this, but it will be case to case basis that we need to analyze and see where it will work on a bundling basis and where it will work without a bundling basis, because we have done successfully both. So I would like to answer it that way rather than giving a specific answer to the question.
Understood. And Sarah, my last question to you, this might be slightly long, but we only have 4 minutes, unfortunately. The question is largely, and I know people, this has been answered in the chat, but has there been research into what the customers feel the product is worth? How keen are they to continue this? And additionally, because you've mentioned that you're not just giving them insurance, you're giving them other tangible ways to adapt to increasing heat. How do you think bundling insurance with something, say, like a telemedicine or a health rider, like a health insurance specifically, would maybe create increased value for the customer?
Yeah, I think it's not a question of whether it increases value. I think it's without a doubt that having these solutions bundled creates additional value. So that's not in question here. It's just a matter of, their awareness of, in their acute sense of kind of, what do I need the most? I think when we're talking about the lives of these populations, if you ask them if they would benefit from something, the answer is going to be yes. So it's a matter of prioritizing. Kind of when we're thinking through the risks that we're facing today, what are my risk priorities? What is top of mind? What's keeping me awake at night? And so it's a matter of, learning from our customers and being in dialogue with them to be able to kind of dissect at, maybe it's during the heat season between April and June. That is when they're saying heat, heat, heat. I know that's what I need the most. But maybe it's for the rest of the year. That's when health insurance, they might answer as being their top concern. And so I think the important part of working with partners that help facilitate really strong dialogue and access to conduct focus groups and to conduct surveys following a season to really understand how our customers experience. And this is where when we use, I saw Dana's question come in, and then also, Kai's response here that, bundling maybe isn't the best word to use this, because bundling is, in the insurance world, it's a bit of a technical term that means kind of what products are we actually putting together and trying to sell. But I think holistic risk mitigation would be a bit of a better way to frame this. And I think having, that dialogue with customers, really understanding what's their top of mind concerns, and that willingness to pay and capability to pay might be differing. That they might say something is worth it, but can they afford it? Maybe not right now. And so things that we're looking at is how can we innovate in terms of building the the habit of paying. So maybe it's small monthly installments, and then those small monthly installments, they add up to a larger sum, and then they can decide as a group, okay, what do we do with that? What insurance coverages would we like to have for the next, 6 months, the next 12 months, and really empower customers to build those habits, have awareness of their risks, and to know what solutions do exist to help them cope with those risks. And so I'll end on that. Thank you.
That's a very interesting perspective, and thank you for that. I think we all seem to agree with the vigorous nodding. But thank you very much to all of our panelists. This has been a very interesting discussion. My key takeaways are this is both very, very important and maybe a little timely as well. We're seeing a lot of interest as well as action from the insurance industry to try and increase products like this. We hope to see that these products are adopted by more and more communities. We hope to see a lot of work done around understanding the need for a product like this and what it actually means at the grassroots level. And hopefully we see these scale up across different countries, different geographies, and different areas and sectors as well. Thank you so much for everyone for attending today. It's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, SCBF team.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Nice
Thank
meeting
you
you
so
all.
much. Take care. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye-bye.